HYBE labels. The giant agency that houses BTS is now facing an almost unstoppable storm of public criticism. Suspicions began to arise after a series of internal decisions that were considered non-transparent, especially regarding one of BTS's most respected and beloved personnel, Kim Seokjin, or better known as Jin. Today, as fans around the world await the latest news from Jin after the completion of his military service, a sharp wave of questions arises. Is HYBE hiding something? And further, what exactly did the public not tell about Jin's condition, activities, and position in the agency's future plans? Disconcerting absences. Speculations are sticking out after Jin officially completed his military duties and made a limited number of public appearances. Army's expectations, as BTS fans are called, rose sharply. The public is looking forward to Jin's comeback agenda, solo promotion schedule, to official interaction through social media. However, instead of receiving clarity, what comes instead is uncertainty. Jin appears occasionally, but there is no official statement from HYBE about the direction of his activities going forward. This condition makes the public question the transparency of the agency. More suspiciously, on several official occasions, Jin appeared to be in the background, giving no press statements or confirmation of comeback plans. As if something big had been deliberately covered up, the public demanded an explanation. Whereas HYBE's role, the anger of global fans began to be evident in various forums, social media comments, and online communities discussing BTS. Some even began to accuse HYBE of systematically orchestrating the narrative and limiting publicly accessible information about Jin. For too long, we have been left guessing. Where is the transparency that HYBE has always claimed? Wrote a Twitter user from Brazil. We just want to know how Jin is doing honestly, not being given riddles every week. Another account from South Korea added, this anger is not without foundation. In an entertainment industry that relies heavily on the trust and loyalty of the public, the withholding of information on one of BTS's main figures actually raises a much deeper question. Is there an internal conflict that is being covered up? Or is there a major decision that is not ready to be announced to the public? HYBE's internal decision sparks controversy. To make matters worse, HYBE recently issued an unusual internal policy. According to a number of anonymous sources quoted by local media, there has been a shift in the internal communication structure in artist management, where BTS members are no longer given complete freedom in managing personal schedules. If this news is true, then such a decision will certainly have a huge impact on Jin, who is known to be independent and very selective in taking on projects. Is HYBE preparing a grand plan, or is she limiting Jin for reasons yet to be revealed? Speculation about Jin's solo project. Postponed or cancelled, many people initially speculated that Jin would release his second solo album after his military service, especially since he himself had expressed that hope before entering the military. But until now, there is no official confirmation of this. Even the fans began to ask, was the project secretly cancelled? This information vacuum creates a vast space for conspiracy theories and unfounded speculation. But what is worth highlighting is that all this happened due to the absence of official and thorough clarification on the part of HYBE herself. Media attention and entertainment reaction, local and international media began to sniff out the existence of internal tensions between artists and agencies. Some columnists highlighted how HYBE seems to be focused on global expansion and commercial interests, while the personal and emotional narratives of BTS members such as Jin are sidelined. A number of Japanese and Taiwanese media outlets even dropped headlines highlighting Jin's gradual disappearance from the spotlight, although the public was eagerly awaiting his comeback. The issue has gone viral not only because it involves global stars, but because it touches on a sensitive issue in the management of the K-pop industry, an artist's right to control his or her own career. HYBE remains silent. Strategy or fear? In the face of the onslaught of criticism, HYBE chose to remain silent. There was no press release, no clarification, and no official statement from the board of directors. Many consider this to be a form of corporate arrogance that is too confident in their dominance in the entertainment industry. But there are also those who consider that HYBE is on the defensive and may be devising a strategy to deal with this turmoil more carefully. But in an age of information openness and the power of social media, silence is not a wise choice. Big question: is this the beginning of the crack in Jin and HYBE's relationship? Some industry observers regard the case as an early indication of deeper tensions. Jin, as a figure who tends to be mature, elegant, and not sensational, is now the center of attention because his absence is conspicuous. Did I ask there a difference in vision between Jin and the agency? Is HYBE pushing Jin in a direction he doesn't want to go? Or is it the Jin themselves who choose to stay away to prepare for something bigger? Army reaction. Loyalty tested amid all this chaos. One thing remains certain: Army loyalty is being tested. Many continued to believe in the genie and chose to wait while continuing to voice demands for clarity. However, others began to show frustration towards HYBE, the agency they had been supporting. International forums such as Weverse, Reddit, to various Twitter hashtags became an arena for debate and speculation. Most considered HYBE no longer worthy of being called a pro-artist agency if they were unable to provide transparency to the public, especially about artists like Jin. Criticism of HYBE communication patterns. HYBE is known for a very strategic and calculating style of communication. However, in the context of Genie, this strategy seems to backfire. Lack of communication actually opens up space for distrust, even unnecessary suspicion. Public trust is built on openness, not mere commercial achievement. Without an honest and assertive statement, HYBE will only further lose control over the narrative that is developing out there. What exactly happened? The public demands the truth. We don't know for sure what's going on behind the glass walls of HYBE's office in Yongsan, Seoul. But for sure, the public is now demanding truth, not propaganda. They want to know, where is Jin now? What is the project ahead? Is he free to choose his own career path? These questions will not stop until HYBE provides clarity. And if left unchecked, HYBE will not only lose the public's trust, but also destroy the reputation that has been built on BTS's big name. Conclusion: transparency or crisis of trust. In the midst of BTS's worldwide popularity, HYBE faces a big test. Can they still maintain an emotional connection between artists and fans? Or have they gone too far in their business strategy to ignore the public's conscience? The public does not demand much. They only ask for one thing: the truth. And as long as that truth hasn't been made public, HYBE will continue to be under the spotlight, not because of her success, but because of her silence. But after all this controversy and uproar, one fundamental question arises that should not be ignored. Does this event really reflect reality? Or is it just the result of a narrative built on certain interests? In the midst of the flow of information that floods social media, how can the public distinguish between truth and illusion? The fact that most of the information that shapes public opinion today comes from platforms such as TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, or online discussion forums, which are often anonymous and unverified, shows how fragile the foundations are for many of the claims that are now viral. Under these conditions, what is the guarantee that public outrage is really based on facts, not on mass emotional manipulation? Are we experiencing a crisis of transparency, or rather a crisis of trust that relies too much on public opinion? Various short clips that are disseminated without complete context are often the trigger for speculation. For example, a brief recording of BTS's Jin looking down or not speaking at a sudden event was interpreted as a form of internal pressure or disagreement with the agency. But is it really so? Are we not forming our own narrative based on assumptions? HYBE's reticence, which in other contexts could perhaps be interpreted as a precautionary measure, was instead negatively interpreted by some of the public. Why is silence considered a sign of guilt? Isn't silence, in some cases, a form of communication strategy that waits for the right time to speak? Or, on the contrary, could it be that the agency does realize that the more it talks about, the more it can be twisted by wild opinions? This condition becomes an important reflection for all of us. Are we, as consumers of information, critical enough to respond to any developments? Or is it just a matter of getting caught up in a whirlpool of emotions and unverified assumptions? One statement without context can inflame global opinion, but it takes a long process to straighten out misunderstandings if they exist.